The morning sun shone brightly on the city of Lagos. Angela walked into the tall glass building of GreenTech Solutions. She felt happy and ready for the week. She wore a clean, white blouse and carried her bag. Today was a big day. She had a very important meeting with a new client later. The office was open and full of light. Desks were grouped together so people could talk. Computers hummed softly. The sound of typing filled the air. "Good morning, Angela," a friendly voice said. It was David. He was a senior developer. He was kind and always had a smile. He was Angela's friend. "Good morning, David," Angela said, smiling back. A woman named Lisa walked by quickly. She looked nervous. She always looked nervous when Dan was near. Lisa was often scared of making Dan angry. Angela sat at her desk. She turned on her computer. She opened her files for the client presentation. She checked everything twice. She wanted it to be perfect. Suddenly, the office became quiet. Dan had arrived. Dan Miller was the operations manager. He was a big man with a loud voice. He walked through the office like he owned it. He did not smile. He looked at everyone like they were doing something wrong. Dan walked past Lisa's desk. He knocked a pile of papers with his arm. The papers flew everywhere. "Clean that up, Lisa. You are always in the way," Dan said without stopping. Lisa's face turned red. She quickly bent down to pick up the papers. Her hands shook. Angela felt bad for Lisa. But she looked down at her own work. She did not want Dan to notice her. It was too late. Dan stopped at Angela's desk. He looked down at her. "That presentation better be good, Angela," Dan said. His voice was not friendly. "Don't mess it up." Angela looked up. She kept her voice calm. "It will be ready, Dan. I am just finishing it." Dan leaned closer. "You think you're so smart. Just because the bosses like you." He walked away, grumbling. David, who sat nearby, rolled his eyes. "Don't listen to him, Angela. He is just a bully." "I know," Angela said. But her happy feeling was gone. Later that morning, Angela went to the break room. She needed a glass of water. She stood by the counter and looked at her tablet. She was checking the charts for her presentation one last time. The break room had a big table, a sink, and a coffee machine. A few people were there, talking and drinking coffee. Angela was focused on her work. She did not see Dan walk in. He was holding his empty coffee cup. His face was dark and angry. "You think you're running this place, huh?" Dan sneered. His voice was loud. Too loud. Everyone in the break room stopped talking. They all looked at Dan and Angela. Angela looked up, startled. "I'm just making sure everything is ready for the client presentation," she said evenly. She tried to stay calm. Dan stepped closer to her. He was so close she could smell his coffee breath. "You think you're better than the rest of us," Dan said, his voice getting louder. "You walk around here like you own the company, with your perfect little presentations." Angela's heart started to beat fast. "Dan, I'm just doing my job." "Your job?" Dan laughed a mean laugh. "Your job is to do what I say." Before Angela could say another word, Dan's face twisted in rage. He lifted his coffee cup. He didn't throw it. He tilted it. He poured the hot, brown liquid right down the front of her white blouse. Gasp! The sound came from everyone in the room at once. Time seemed to stop. The hot coffee soaked through the thin fabric of Angela's blouse. It was so hot it stung her skin. A dark, ugly stain spread across her chest. Angela's mouth fell open. Her eyes were wide with shock and pain. She quickly stepped back, clutching her wet shirt. She could feel everyone staring at her. Dan didn't stop there. He pointed a finger at her. "You're worthless," he barked. "Always trying to show off. Maybe if you spent less time acting like some queen, you'd actually do your job right. The room was completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Dozens of coworkers stared in disbelief. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Others looked down at the floor, feeling sick and uncomfortable. No one moved. No one dared to say anything to Dan. Angela stood there, trembling. The hot, wet fabric stuck to her skin. She felt a burning shame. She felt humiliated in front of everyone. Her eyes filled with tears. But she would not let them fall. She would not let Dan see her cry. She took a deep, shaky breath. With her head held high, she turned around. She did not look at anyone. She walked slowly and carefully out of the break room. She left behind a stunned silence. Dan watched her go. He smirked. He looked around the room at all the silent, scared faces. He felt like he had won some invisible battle. He put his empty coffee cup down on the counter with a loud clank. "Show's over," he said to everyone. "Get back to work." People slowly turned away. They started to move again, but no one spoke. The happy Monday morning buzz was gone. David was standing near the door. His hands were clenched into tight fists. He was so angry he felt like he could not breathe. He wanted to shout at Dan. He wanted to hit him. But he knew he would lose his job if he did. He saw the pain on Angela's face as she walked out. He felt helpless. Angela did not go to her desk. She walked straight to the bathroom. Her legs felt weak. Her chest where the coffee had hit was red and sore. She pushed the bathroom door open. It was empty. She locked herself in a stall and leaned against the door. She let out a long, shaky breath. Tears finally came. They were hot and quiet. She cried for a minute, letting out the hurt and the shock. Then she stopped. She wiped her eyes with a piece of toilet paper. She walked out of the stall and looked at herself in the big mirror. She saw a woman with a stained, wet blouse. She saw a woman who had been publicly shamed. But she also saw a strong woman. A woman who was good at her job. A woman who did not deserve this. "This is not my shame," she whispered to her reflection. "This is his." She took off her blouse. She washed the coffee stain with cold water and soap in the sink. It was still wet, but it was a little better. She put the damp blouse back on. It felt cold and uncomfortable, but she did not care. She was not going to run home and hide. She was not going to let Dan win. She took her phone out of her pocket. Her hands were steady now. She opened a secret app on her phone. For weeks, she had been quietly recording Dan's mean comments and outbursts. She had saved emails. She had written notes. She knew he was a bully, and she wanted to protect herself and others. She pressed a button to stop a recording. She had recorded the whole thing in the break room. His angry words. The sound of the coffee pouring. The gasps. Everything. She had all the proof she needed. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time. Her eyes were clear. Her back was straight. She walked out of the bathroom. She did not turn left towards her desk. She turned right. She walked down the long, quiet hallway. Her wet blouse clung to her skin. Her shoes made a soft clicking sound on the floor. At the end of the hallway was a big, wooden door. On the door was a nameplate that said Mark CEO. Angela stopped in front of the door. She took one last, deep breath. Then, she raised her hand and knocked firmly on the door. The story was just beginning. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was firm and clear. It broke the quiet of the hallway. "Come in," a voice called from inside the office. Angela turned the handle and opened the big, wooden door. She stepped into Mark's office. Mark was the big boss, the CEO of GreenTech Solutions. He was sitting behind a large, tidy desk. He was looking at papers on his computer screen. He looked up and smiled when he saw Angela. but his smile quickly faded. He saw her white blouse. It was wet. A large, ugly brown stain spread across the front. Her face was pale, but her eyes were strong and serious. "Angela?" Mark said, standing up from his chair. His voice was full of concern. "What happened? Are you all right?" Angela closed the door softly behind her. She stood straight in front of his desk. "Mark," she said. Her voice was calm, but he could hear a small shake in it. "Something very bad just happened. Dan poured his hot coffee on me in the break room. He did it on purpose. In front of everyone." Mark's face changed. The friendly look was gone. Now he looked shocked. Then, he looked angry. His eyebrows came together. He pointed to a chair in front of his desk. "Sit down, Angela. Please. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." Angela sat down. She told him the whole story. She did not shout or cry. She just told the facts. She told him how Dan had been mean to her for a long time. She told him about the loud, angry words in the break room. She told him about the hot coffee. She told him about the horrible names Dan had called her in front of all their coworkers. Mark listened. He did not interrupt. His hands were clasped tightly on his desk. When Angela finished, he was quiet for a moment. The air in the room felt heavy. "I did not know," Mark said finally. His voice was low and serious. "I did not know Dan was acting like this. This is completely unacceptable. This is not how we treat people at this company." He picked up the phone on his desk. He pressed a button. "Sarah," he said to his assistant, "can you please find David and Lisa? I need to see them in my office right now. It's urgent." A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. David and Lisa walked in. They both looked nervous when they saw Angela sitting there with her stained blouse. "Please sit down," Mark said. He looked at both of them. "I need you to tell me the truth. What happened in the break room this morning?" David spoke first. He was brave. He looked straight at Mark. "It was awful, Mark," David said. "Dan was yelling at Angela for no reason. He was saying terrible things. Then he just poured his coffee all over her. On purpose. He called her worthless. Everyone saw it." Mark turned to Lisa. Lisa was looking down at her hands. She was twisting her fingers together. "Lisa?" Mark asked, his voice gentler. "Is this what you saw too?" Lisa nodded slowly. She looked up, and her eyes were a little wet. "Yes," she whispered. "It was just like David said. Dan was so mean. Angela didn't do anything wrong." Saying this out loud seemed to make her a little braver. "Thank you both," Mark said. "Thank you for telling me the truth. You can go back to your work now." David and Lisa stood up and left the office. David gave Angela a small, encouraging nod before he closed the door. Now, Mark's face was like stone. He picked up his phone again. This time, his voice was hard. "Dan, I need you in my office. Now." They waited. The clock on the wall ticked. Angela sat quietly. She felt a small sense of relief. She was not alone anymore. Mark believed her. The door swung open without a knock. Dan walked in. He looked confident. He thought he was in charge. "You wanted to see me, Mark?" Dan said. Then he saw Angela. He smirked. "Oh, what is she doing here? Telling tales?" "Dan," Mark's voice was cold and sharp. "Angela has told me about the incident in the break room. David and Lisa have confirmed it. Would you like to explain yourself?" Dan laughed. "It was a nasty sound. It was an accident. She bumped into me. The coffee just spilled. She's making a big drama out of nothing because she can't take a joke. It was not an accident, Angela said quietly. She looked right at Dan. You lifted your cup and you poured it on me. Don't you lie, you. Dan started to shout. Enough. Mark's voice boomed through the office. He stood up. He was not a tall man, but in that moment he seemed very big. I have heard enough. Your story does not match what two other people saw. I believe them. I do not believe you. Dan's smirk vanished. His face began to turn red. You're taking her word over mine. After all I've done for this company? What you have done today is shameful, Mark said. You have assaulted a colleague. You have created a toxic environment. Effective immediately, you are suspended. Dan's mouth fell open. Suspended? You can't be serious. I am completely serious, Mark said. You will leave the office now. You will not come back until we have finished a full investigation. You will not be paid during this time. Now leave. Dan was shocked. His eyes bulged. He looked from Mark's angry face to Angela's calm one. He had thought he was untouchable. He had thought no one would dare to challenge him. He pointed a shaking finger at Angela. This is your fault, he snarled. Then he turned and stormed out of the office, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The sound of the slam echoed away. The office was quiet again. Mark let out a long breath. He looked tired. Angela, I am so sorry. So very sorry that this happened to you. You should go home for the day. Take the rest of the week off, with pay. Angela shook her head. Thank you, Mark. But I don't want to go home. Mark looked surprised. You don't? No, Angela said. She stood up. Her damp blouse was starting to feel cold, but her resolve was warm. I have a client presentation this afternoon. I worked very hard on it. The client is important for GreenTech. I am not going to let Dan ruin that too. A look of great respect crossed Mark's face. He nodded. All right. If you're sure. I am sure, Angela said. She walked out of Mark's office and went to the bathroom to clean up once more. She did her best to dry her blouse with the hand dryer. She fixed her hair. Then, she went to the small kitchen and got a clean, company sweater to put on over her blouse. It was dark blue with the GreenTech logo. She looked professional and ready. At 1 o'clock, she walked into the conference room. The clients were already there. So were a few of her coworkers, including David. They all looked at her with surprise and admiration. They knew what had happened. They knew Dan was gone. And now here she was, ready to work. Angela gave her presentation. Her voice was clear and confident. She smiled. She answered all the clients' questions perfectly. The clients were very impressed. When she finished, they clapped. Excellent work, Angela, one of the clients said. We are very excited to work with your team. Thank you, Angela said. We are excited to work with you too. After the clients left, David came up to her. You were amazing, he said. I don't know how you did that. Angela just smiled. But inside, she was thinking about the secret recording on her phone. She was thinking about all the other times Dan had been cruel. This was not over yet. Meanwhile, in his office, Mark was not resting. He was angry and disappointed. He had trusted Dan. He started to look deeper. He opened Dan's company email account. He looked at old messages. At first, he saw small things. Rude emails to other team members. Demands that were too harsh. But then, he found something bigger. He found emails between Dan and a company that was a rival to GreenTech. They were talking about money. They were talking about secret projects. Mark's heart started to beat faster. He opened another file. It was a financial report that Dan had sent to him last month. But now, looking closely, Mark saw that some of the numbers were wrong. Some money was missing. It looked like Dan was trying to hide it. Dan wasn't just a bully. He was a thief. Mark could not believe what he was seeing. He felt sick. He picked up his phone. His hand was trembling with anger. He needed to call someone. He needed to call the company lawyer. What else would he find? The investigation was only just beginning.